Hello, everybody. We're back. Welcome to Philosophy15. I'm Robert Talese.
I'm Scott Aiken.
We are professors at Vanderbilt University. We teach philosophy, and this is a series, back up and running now, of unscripted 15-minute, roughly, conversations about random, assorted philosophical topics. Today, we want to talk a little bit about a Platonic dialogue called the Crito. Crito is, for those of you who don't know, the dialogue that occurs inside the prison cell of Socrates when Socrates is 3 days out from execution. And it's a dialogue about political obligation, particularly the obligation to obey the law.
Right. So the surprising thing about the Crito is not just the fact that Crito snuck in and watched Socrates sleep. It's
a little weird.
That's a little weird.
Creepy.
And that's a little creepy. And Crito's supposed to be Socrates' best friend and seems to not understand anything about his motivations. And you're like, I'm your best friend, Socrates. I'm completely surprised by all the things that you're saying now. So those are two surprising things about the Crito. But the big thing about the Crito is, here's Socrates after his defense. He's been found not only guilty of impiety and corrupting the young, but then sentenced to death. 80 people who voted, by the way, 80 people who voted that he was innocent voted for death. Partly because of how his counter proposal as to what the other sentence should be. But Socrates is sentenced to death and has an opportunity to escape what might be an unjust punishment, and he has an opportunity to escape. Crito's got a really fast cart to get him out of Athens. He's bribed all the guards. Why doesn't Socrates escape? He can continue to do philosophy where he could do it. He could stay alive, keep philosophy alive. Why doesn't he escape?
Yeah, it's a peculiar dialogue on lots of grounds. One is that the reasons that Crito offers to try to convince Socrates to escape are the kinds of reasons that nobody who knows Socrates could dream of them being persuasive to Socrates. I mean, in fact, the main reason why that Crito offers why Socrates should escape is if you are executed, it'll make us, your friends, look bad.
People will think that we're bad friends because we didn't help you escape.
Yeah, people will think we're bad friends, so we were too cheap.
That's
to
right.
Pay off the people who need to be bought, to pay the bribes.
So for us, Socrates, you have to escape. For our and Socrates very famously has the doctrine of opinions, which he just says, why should I care? Why should you care? Why should anybody care about what the masses, what the people, what the many think, the hoi polloi think? And so you should care about what the wise think. And he says, look, I follow where the reasons take me. And the reasons take him to thinking that not only would he damage the state by escaping, but it would be unjust. It would be an unjust damage because an unjust person does no harm. It would not just harm the state, but it would be unjust to harm the state, even if the state was doing something bad to him.
Right. So there are two two argumentative moments in the dialogue. The second of which involves a personified...
The laws!
The laws are imagined to show up and confront Socrates and Crito as Socrates and Crito, now allied on the question of whether to escape, are about to take the first step outside of the jail cell. The personified laws show up, but and that's where a lot of the doctrine,
the substantive argument really happens. But there's a background argument.
Yeah, there's a background argument.
Do no harm principle.
It strikes me as so puzzling.
Yeah.
Which is that it's never right to return harm for harm.
Right.
That no matter what anybody does to you, you owe them good. Right? You it's never right to react in a way that harms people. Presumably, even in cases of like self-defense in the face of, aggression.
Right. Someone's broken into your house and they're taking all your stuff and they're going to harm you.
Yeah. You can't fight. You can't
fight
punch
back.
back.
You can't fight back, really?
It seems like the kind of pacifist doctrine that, well, it's more than a pacifist doctrine because it doesn't allow you to do nothing.
Do nothing.
You're required
to help.
You're required to do good, no matter.
Yeah.
You're required always to do good in response to however you are treated. So it's not like you can even just go about your business and like take the punch and walk on. But you have to take the punch and then give the guy $5.
Yeah. There's another motivational puzzle upstream from that one, which is justice requires that you not do any harm. But the primary question, or one of the primary questions for the Platonic question is, well then, why be just? So again, one of the first premises is that the good life, the beautiful life, and the just life are all the same. And you're like, that's clearly a challengeable premise. Again, Crito has very little to say. So again, later Platonic dialogues for that one.
Right.
But still, this do no harm doctrine is upstream from this, which seems like a really extreme view.
Totally implausible.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and I think...
So maybe the question...
It's also built on a kind of misunderstanding that when somebody's aggressing against me and I have to punch them in the face to ward off the attack, that punch in the face is an act of the same kind, as if I just randomly walked up to somebody and punched them in the face.
So I wonder if there's a sort of a plausibility making interpretation here, which would be to say something like, by harm or by bad, we mean an unjustified bad. You do no evil. We'll just and say that the evil is a bad that's not justified. So the just person does no evil that's not justified. So the thought then is, that's the reason why the law's argument works the way that it does. First part of the law's argument is that it's a harming or a sort of a degrading argument, which is that if you break the laws, you degrade the state. And then the second part is, but then it would be an unjustified or an unjust degrading. So I wonder if there's a way to save it, which is the just person does no unjust harm.
He could have said that, but I don't think then that you get this strong prohibition against law breaking, because it looks as if you say, well, it's not really never return harm for harm. It's never return unjust harm, right? Never do anything unjust or unjustified. It seems to me that, well, the state's going to force me to drink a cup of hemlock for no good reason. My escaping from prison now looks a little bit more like punching the mugger. A little bit more like
self-defense now.
Yeah.
So a lot of this then does come down to the substantive philosophical arguments that constitute the law's case. Then as the ground of the justice of what you owe to the state.
That's right. So Socrates gives this never return harm for harm argument. Crito seems puzzled.
Yeah.
And then Socrates says, well, think of it this way.
Right.
And then he proceeds to give a different set of arguments.
Right. It's not about the good life, just life.
It's not.
This is about like what you owe to somebody.
That's right. And he brings in the imaginary third party to their discussion, the laws, and the laws, I think, give two different kinds of argument that I don't think are consistent with one another.
That is a significant challenge.
So the laws say, on the one hand, it's always impermissible to break the law because we're like your parents, only more so. And just as it's wrong for a child to disobey his or her parents, it's wrong for citizens to disobey the state, because the state is like your super parent or something like this.
So like the primary virtues of a child is obedience and honor. That it's that sort of souped up to a greater degree with citizens.
And that kind of argument rests on the idea that there are natural modes of human interpersonal association that are hierarchically arranged, and there's nothing in that part of the argument that is presented by the personified laws that suggests that there's any reciprocal quid pro quo, like you give me obedience and I put a roof over your head. Right. You give me obedience and... Well, no, that stuff comes up. but in the
but it's-
mode of a different argument.
Yeah. But it does. But there are features of it which is that the laws made it so that you could become you. The law. It's not that this was that this was an agreement. It's that the laws have provided these things, and it's an organic relation. And so again, you don't owe it in virtue of that. I
Right.
agree. But it's that you've got this organic relation that you are you as part of this larger organic whole.
That's right.
And you being the proper you that you are,
Right.
has the it's effectively like kind of a function argument. Like your function as part of this whole is to be like the pinky doesn't get to think it's brainy.
That's
It's
right.
like you remember the kind of thing that you are part of this larger whole.
That's right. So that kind of holistic, associative, organicist view of why citizens owe obedience to the state is one track of argument presented by the laws. The other track, which I don't think is consistent with the organic story, is the keep your just agreements.
Yeah.
Because agreements are voluntarily entered into. They're
You're your own person. You could get out if you want.
Yeah, you can exit. There's a quid pro quo. There's I do this, and in return you give me this. It has none of sort of the keep your just agreements argument has none of the substantive features of the we're just a happy family argument. Right. And from the point of view of just like you don't choose your parents, you don't choose your family, you don't choose who you become. Right, all of these things are the family structure is the source of who you become and all the rest. But in the keep your just agreements argument, it's all based on this idea that you show up.
You made a promise.
You show up to the enterprise of obeying the law, being a member of a state, a fully formed human being that can enter into an agreement. Yeah. Which presumes all kinds of rationality and that you can understand the concept of a promise or an agreement, that you're able to properly understand the quid pro quo, the bargaining aspect of it. And so it looks as if, it seems to me now, you don't get the strong philosophical upshot of the dialogue, which is this terribly severe
the laws even concede that like sometimes I'm going to ask you to do stuff and suffer stuff that are pretty severe commands.
To go off in a cold field and die in chains,
right? And
you have to suffer that. You have to. If we tell you to do it, you have to do it.
But then it's the next right.
So it's this persuade or obey
that's the next doctrine,
which denies.
I don't just say this ex cathedra. I do give you an opportunity to talk me into other options.
But persuade or obey is still a doctrine that denies the permissibility of law breaking under any circumstances.
Right.
Because law breaking is not itself conceived of as a potential avenue for persuasion.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like if you're persuading, you're doing. If you're disobeying, you're doing wrong.
Right. There've got to be official channels for persuasion, and
it's not clear what they are.
And one of the questions in the background are, if the official channels for persuasion fail, is the requirement of persuade or obey broken? Was that the covenant that was at the center of this all? It's like parents and the parental obligation and the association or the tacit consent. Both obligations have got a persuade or obey requirement in the background. If the opportunities for persuasion are not met, say, take for example, imagine that Socrates is worried that the jury members just aren't listening, right? You got yourself a trial, but nobody was listening, or nobody was going to take you seriously. Is that an opportunity of real persuasion?
Yeah, I don't see how the persuade or obey argument as a doctrine as it's presented can I don't see how you can get something so severe out of the keep your just agreements.
Yeah.
Right, because just agreements have to have escape clauses, right? And this looks like it's a non-escape. It's non-escape. It looks to me like you only get the doctrine of persuade or obey from the state is like your parents' argument, and the just agreements argument is a cog that's not really. That's
our 15 minute. That's our 15-minute mark.
That's a cog.
That's a new one.
It's a cog on which nothing is really turning. Philosophy 15, folks. That was
Wrecking up Platonic dialogues for you.